So I'll be discussing the impact of intermittent fasting on the cognitive focus, energy level, and physical health among adolescents. Some background information. Obesity in all age groups have been increasing within the past decades, with the greatest increase in the adolescents age group, ages 12 to 19 years. And as you can see here in this graph, marked by the light green line, it has been steadily increasing over the past decades, as well as all the other age groups. However, just because it has been increasing does not mean that these adolescents have not been trying to lose weight. In fact, this graph shows that the percentage of adolescents aged 16 to 19 who have tried to lose weight within the past year, categorized by gender and weight status. So the main problem must be how they're trying to lose weight. A lot of adolescents are referring back to social media, with around 30% going to TikTok, 20% to Instagram, and around 14% to Pinterest. This can lead to a disrupted body image, lack of information, and ultimately shortcuts to lose weight, where many adolescents would find themselves with intermittent fasting, which was ultimately made for adults. So this is a dietary method that involves cycling between both fasting and eating periods. But unlike to what many people might think, it's not a new concept, as it's been done by many religions for the past centuries. To start, we'll find many different types of intermittent fasting within the research. One of the most noticeable is time-restricted eating, which involves hour-based eating windows, such as in the photo 16-18 method, which involves 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of eating. This method of intermittent fasting, unlike many others, fits the body's natural circadian rhythm, which is the body's alarm clock that decides when you should eat and when it's most optimal to get rest. Compared to the other methods, this is rather low intensity. The next intermittent fasting method is alternate day fasting, also known as ADF. This involves fasting every other day, with every other day consuming around 400 to 600 calories. This has more severe caloric restriction than time-restricted eating, and is in turn more intense. Another method pretty similar to the previous method is the 5-2 method, which involves 5-day eating windows and 2 days of fasting. This may be more practical than ADF, as the person fasting can choose what 2 days to fast, such as if they have work or school on the weekday, they can choose Saturday and Sunday to fast. And finally, religious fasting, which is the most practiced way of fasting, and thus often the most researched. The most noticeable type of intermittent fasting is Ramadan, where you fast from dawn to sunset. It's more short-term because you only do it for 1 month out of the whole year, and it has been proven to show body composition and changes in insulin levels. In fact, around 2 billion people participate in Ramadan every year. To start, we'll be looking on the impact of intermittent fasting on the cognitive focus on adolescents. Adolescents are undergoing constant neurological development, especially in very important parts of the brain, such as the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision-making and memory. Along this, they are involved in various social and academic demands. And because cognitive focus is not a physical aspect, it is often overlooked. The first research study was done on female athletes during Ramadan. It used the P300 latency to determine reaction time and auditory processing before Ramadan and 2 weeks after Ramadan started. They found that the P300 latency remained constant throughout these days. In conclusion, the impact of intermittent fasting on the cognitive focus varies based on lifestyle and the method chosen. It may limit mental clarity in adolescents and overall proves more risks than benefits. Next, the impact on the energy level. It's a fact that adolescents have high metabolic rates and nutritional needs compared to their adult counterparts. Similarly to the cognitive focus aspect, it also has limited research because it's not the main purpose of intermittent fasting. And just like many of the other factors, the most research done is on Ramadan. A particular study on the mid-teens during Ramadan showed an increase in a reported of 12% fatigue and 20% in tension just within the first 2 weeks of Ramadan. It also showed a hemoglobin and iron levels. It also showed that hemoglobin and iron levels declined throughout this period, and also lower glucose levels. This proves that overall it may have not too much of an impact, but because adolescents do need proper nutrition for the development of their brain and body, there might be a negative impact on mood and energy levels, but it's uncertain because of the limited information done on this age group. Finally, the impact on physical health. Adolescents are categorized by having a growth spurts and going through puberty, rapid growth and development. Without proper nutrition, there's an increase of health-related issues. In turn, this research is mostly focused on obesity and metabolic risks. Research done on adolescents whose BMI exceeded the 95th percentile found that there was a 25% caloric deficit within the days of intermittent fasting. This particular research had a time-restricted eating method, which involved 16 hours of fasting and an 8-hour eating window. However, even with the 25% decrease in calories consumed, there was not a significant weight decrease compared to the control who didn't partake in any diet whatsoever. With this, they also saw no adverse side effects. Another research was done on adolescents with obesity and compared intermittent energy restriction with continuous energy restriction, which is, in summary, intermittent fasting with a typical diet that limits constant caloric intake. Both groups found an average of 0.28 in BMI scores in both groups. Also an improvement with insulin resistance and reduction in binge eating. Overall, it's proven that intermittent fasting may encourage weight loss among those who already have weight loss problems, but it's not necessarily better than any other standard diet. It may also not be beneficial for adolescents who are not struggling with weight problems. Overall, the impact of intermittent fasting on the cognitive focus, energy level, and physical health of adolescents depends primarily on the intermittent fasting method and the current health of the adolescents. For example, as seen in the group with athletic females, they didn't see the same results as the group that had obesity. It's a fact, though, that all methods do hinder nutritional intake because they are dietary methods that limit when the body will consume calories. As a whole, intermittent fasting may not be broadly recommended for adolescents without health complications. Thank you.
Okay, Bruno, we're just going to open it up now to some questions from the panel.
Thank you, Bruno. That was great. I would love to know what got you interested in doing this, and particularly because I got to hear your humorous speech and your reflection on yourself as a younger child. So I didn't know if that played a role or what kind of made you interested in this.
Sure. So when I was younger, around 5th grade to the beginning of middle school, I did struggle a little bit with weight complications. I wasn't necessarily overweight, but I was self-conscious about my body image. And that led me to go on social media, like a lot of adolescents nowadays, and look for quick and effective methods. But I didn't realize at the time that a lot of these methods were made for adults. So myself, being like a 11-year-old, was following these diets, these extreme diets and intermittent fasting methods that I was seeing in social media. So obviously I didn't see any results, and so this got me curious, and I started doing a dive into nutrition, and ultimately it got me into working out more and just doing stuff more to help my body, eating the right foods. And then now, ultimately, I want to go into college for nutritional sciences, for like pre-med. So it's a full circle.
Thank you.
Bruno, did if someone aged 15 has a regimen where they will eat during the day, but stop at 8 o'clock and not have anything until, let's say, 8 in the morning, does that really have that much of an impact on their overall?
Well, yeah, so that's a different type of method. It's not as intense, obviously, as other methods. It's called the 12-12 method, which you fast for 12 hours and then you have a 12-hour eating window. That's honestly what a lot of people do, like, without trying. It does not have, in turn, that big of an impact compared to other methods like alternate day fasting or the 16-8 method, which is also another form of time-restricted eating. But it can show a little bit. It's mostly involved with the circadian rhythm, which is kind of just your body's natural clock that tells you when you should sleep, how long you should sleep for, when you should eat, and it helps with a lot of metabolic risks and factors like that. So it won't have as much of an impact on other more intense fasting methods.
And one follow-up is the information that's being put out on social media is that if you do these fasting programs, when you reach those hours where you're allowed to consume calories, you can eat anything you want. So bring me a 10,000 calorie diet, and I'm fine as long as I fast for 16 hours.
No, so a lot of these studies didn't necessarily involve details on the food consumed by the people during the eating period, just because it varies so much. But the research done assumes that the person will follow the eating schedule they normally do during the eating periods and just not consuming any calories during the fasting period. So it does have an effect. Obviously, if you consume less calories, you're going to lose more weight. But it's hard to balance that with research because it varies so much between it. So.
I have a follow-up question from that too, because I saw that like restricting binge eating. Did any of the studies talk specifically about like the types of food that were being eaten? Because like binge eating cherry tomatoes is very different than binge eating like Doritos. Yeah, so it didn't. The research that I saw didn't necessarily dive specifically into what they were binge eating, but I can assume that it's probably like more. When they talk about eating, it's it's different. The healthy kind of food you should eat. And the binge eating would be like junk food and then high calorie. Because I could see like a teen mind being like, oh, I can eat whatever I want during this time, and it's not exactly the kind of food. It's all about balance for sure.
And do any of these programs have they looked at the effects of exercise combined with the?
Yeah, so
fasting, I would think that could be a huge element as well.
Like I was saying before, the research done on the athletes, the female athletes, varies differently with those who were obese. The P300 amplitude and latency that was measured did not vary among the athletic females, and the P300 amplitude and latency is involved with decision making, memory, and reaction time. So it didn't have as much of a change on the more athletic group compared to the group that were struggling with weight loss.
Bruno, I'm interested, what studies did you use, and approximately how many of them did you use to base your conclusions on?
Yeah, so I used mainly research done in the National Institution of Health. I had probably around 20 to like 25 sources inside of my research paper. And not all of them were research, and I also did, of course, background research as well. And like I said before, I've been interested in this topic for quite some time, so some of the information that I did implement was information that I already had known before I started this further research a few months ago.
So would you say most of your sources were like
Yes,
like
national
medical
institutions.
journals and
Yes,
things like
yes. And then, yeah, all those medical journals, and then I kind of gathered all the information and then got what their results were.
Bruno,
Yes.
what in your research, did you uncover any of the leading causes for adolescent obesity?
Not necessarily, because my focus was more on the impact of intermittent fasting, and it's a fact that obesity, as you saw in the graph before, it has been increasing within the past decades. It could be because of technology, the sedentary lifestyle, more westernized diets, and obviously growth in social media and like false nutritional plans such as those could have an effect. But I didn't necessarily dive into that area. Yes.
Bruno, can you describe for us a significant challenge that you had in this research and in this overall inquiry, and then what did you do and how did that impact your final result?
Sure. So in the beginning, I wasn't planning on also researching the cognitive focus aspect. But I was very passionate about doing the adolescence age group because obviously I'm involved in that age group. And because of this, I didn't see a lot of information on adolescents. It was mainly on adults because that's what intermittent fasting was originally made for. So I really had to do a lot of research and go through a lot of different articles that were on adults and then compare them to adolescents because there weren't many on adolescents. So that was my biggest struggle, was finding ones that specifically impacted the age group from around 13 to 19.
Are you allowed in intermittent fasting? You're restricting yourself from food, but not from liquid, right?
Yes. So it's mostly just calorie dense food, or so you can't drink like a protein shake while you're fasting because it has it's calorie dense. But obviously you could have water or liquids such as those. Clear liquids usually are allowed.
So Bruno, kind of a tag on to Ms. Barnes. Did you find any kind of research about what age group is ideal for adolescents, or should they postpone fasting?
Sure. So overall, it's not recommended for adolescents as a whole because they're undergoing this period in their life where they're undergoing mental and physical development. So it's not necessarily, I wouldn't recommend it to any particular age group. However, if you are undergoing a weight loss complication such as obesity, it could be recommended to consult like a nutritionist to see if they recommend that for you. But for the average adolescent, I think they should wait until they're older.